الله مدد مدد الله الله منك المدد الله الله عظيم مدد الله الله كريم مدد الله الله مدد مدد الله الله منك المدد الله الله عظيم مدد الله الله كريم مدد يا رب يا غوثا يا مولانا يا روضة العشاق قد هيجت موجتي يا حضرة الإطلاق فيضتي صبابتي.
Sudanese Sufi Woman Series الحاج السارة بنت الشيخ محمد وقيع الله 1918-2010. Welcome dear audience to this new episode of our series of Sudanese Sufi women. A journey into the lives of the noble women who carry the light of knowledge, worship and compassion across Sudan. Today, we open a chapter from the history of Azariba, the heartland of the Sammani Sufi tradition, where the masjid of Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah stood as a beacon of faith and renewal. From this sacred soil arose a remarkable woman, both poet and educator, a sister to one of Sudan's greatest saints, and herself a guardian of devotion. In our presence today, الحاج السارة بنت الشيخ محمد وقيع الله.
من طيب الخميرة جلوت بها السوى عن نور البصيرة جلوت بها السوى عن نور البصيرة.
So before I go further in handling the life story, the contribution of this great woman, Al-Hajj Sarah, Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah, I would like to inform the audience that throughout this series, I covered sample of the most noted and prominent figures among Sudanese Sufis in the northern part of the country. Furthermore, I have covered more than one episode on that prominent figures in the central Sudan. Moreover, the capital Khartoum, with a special reference to the north of Khartoum and part of the suburb of Khartoum, furthermore, witness my presentation to a sample of prominent Sufi women in that areas. And recently, I covered an episode about a noted Sudanese Sufi woman in Eastern Sudan, السيدة مريم المرقنية. And today, our journey continues. And in this episode together, we would like to experience a great woman from Kordofan, with a special reference north of Kordofan. However, my dear audience, my guest, my invitation to you extend to witness together, to experience together such samples of Sudanese Sufi women contributions and history as main players to the development and to the evolution of Islam in Sudan from a side and Tasawwuf from another side. Back into the biography of Sheikh Hajj Sarah, Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah, we continue and say her biography informs that she was the full sister of the noted and perfect Wali Sheikh Rahim al-Burai, the famous and noted Sudanese spiritual guide and poet. But her legacy stands distinct and radiant. She was born in the year 1918, and she was nurtured under the direct guidance of her father, the noted Wali Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah, the founder of the Sammani Center of Zariba in northern part of Kordofan. She became the very first woman in her community to learn reading and writing, and soon dedicated her life to teaching women, receiving knowledge and serving her society. In the masjid of her father, Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah, Sheikh Hajj Sarah became his most trusted companion. She memorized his words, received his biography, and assisted in his daily programs of dhikr and teaching. When the sick came to seek healing, she prepared the Mihaya tablets. And by the way, Mihaya tablets consist of Quranic verses written with devotion, given adhkar and blessing. So in time, she herself became recognized for her ability to heal the sick and comfort those in need. So her life was marked by both outer service and inner devotion. She fasted often, not only Ramadan, the obligatory month that Muslim ought to fast, with the exception of those who have been allowed to break the fasting with a special condition. So Hajj Sarah, by the way, fasted not only Ramadan but in Rajab and Sha'ban as a voluntary practice. At night she filled the silence with dhikr. Though not wealthy, she was known for her generosity. Whatever she possessed was quickly spent in charity. She even carried her own rosary of Al-Alfiya. By the way, Al-Alfiya, that is the 1,000 rosary beads. Sufis in Sudan are so very famous with Alfiya. And Alfiya, as I told, it is a type of rosary or prayer beads that consist of 1,000 piece of beads. It used as a tool in performance dhikr. So Hajj Sarah is one of those sincere, self-determined Sufi who herself her own 1,000 rosary beads. In other words, and in short, she has Alfiya rosary. Always engaged in remembrance and dhikr. Hajj Sarah, by the way, was not only a teacher of the Quran nor a farmer, but also a midwife, a healer, and a custodian of her community women. She assisted in childbirth, cared for the ill, and performed the washing of the deceased, roles that made her indispensable to the women of northern Kordofan. Her love for poetry was immense. She memorized verses of the prophetic press writer, the renowned poet, the Yemeni, Sheikh Abdurrahim al-Bur'i al-Yamani. She was herself a poet, composing odes in praising of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, as well as her father, Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah. And we'll take a sample of her poetic production in the very same episode today. Through much of her work has been lost, though much of her work has been lost, her talent was remembered by all who heard her recite poetry. Her biography, as we have stated shortly, that she is a farmer, a healer, a teacher, and a midwife. What I would like to tell here is that despite having the highest status, she continued to engage in farming. Having her own farm that was 5 kilometers away from the masjid where she performed her daily duties. The speech here is for the researcher and her grandson, the author Abdurrahim Haj Ahmed. He stated, I used to accompany her when I was young so that I could assist her. I used to ride the donkey with her to the farm, and occasionally we would walk there. This occurred every day of the harvest season. She would spend her time in the farm, either reciting the Quran or praying or sending a prayer upon the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. At the time of Duha prayer, she would stop all work and perform the ablution in order to perform the significant voluntary prayer. This was her custom, whether she was at home or in the farm. The speech is still for her grandson, Abdurrahim Haj Ahmed. She is seen giving generously around harvest season, spending and distributing the grain to the weak, the destitute, and those in need. Despite being Sheikh al-Bur'i's full sister and without knowing him, she served as a model of a true ascetic and abstinence figure. She used to prepare the food before sending it to the masjid, visitors, and guests. Haj Sarah had another honorable duty, which was to provide midwifery to her own women community. She was the midwife and the traditional healer for the children and adults. These good works were carried out in that remote society of Northern Kordofan. She was also in charge of carrying out the rituals of washing the corpses of the dead women, because she was the most educated woman in her village. Being an educated woman, reading was a part of her daily routine. She especially enjoyed poetry, fiqh, and tasawwuf books. She used to memorize by heart a large amount of prophetic madih, mainly that one of the noted Yemeni poet Sheikh Rahim al-Yamani, as well as portions for non-Sudanese poets and Sudanese poets as well. Here the person will witness the speech still for her grandson, Rahim Haj Ahmed. Here the person will witness her master the reciting and memorizing of these poems. When I first joined the Scientific Institute, I distinctly recall her asking me, "What do you read about?" She urged me to expand my Arabic language reading after I informed her of the topics we studied at the Institute. She then continued by reciting a beautiful line verse by وقيع of Yemen. كلام بلا نحو طعام بلا ملح ونحو بلا شعر ظلام بلا صبح.
أأنتم فروضي ونقلي، أأنتم حديثي وشغلي، يا قبلتي في صلاتي إذا وقفت صلى.
Meanwhile, Hajj Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah was a knowledgeable and accomplished poet, and as such, she authored and composed numerous odes in praise of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, as well as her father, the eminent wali, Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah. Unfortunately, just a small portion of her poems have been received. And before her passing away, she asked me to bring a paper and then write of what she will dedicate to me. Of what she will dictate to me. Listen to her in the blue lines, enchanted in the praising of the seal of messengers and prophets, stating his birth, noble descent, miracles. Listen. آلاف الصلاة لخير البرية والتسليم جزيل عدد المات وحيا، نرجوك يا كريم موجودا وحيا بالأسمى الحسان والمختار نبيا، بالرسل الكرام نرجوك جود علي بطاعتك دوام في الضي والعشية، ثنيت بالرسول طه الأبطحية وتفهر وكنان الحاذا المزية، يوم النار تفور والناس في القضية جانا المصطفى وشال حمل العلية، وضع المصطفى بالاثنين عشية خر مكبرا لله العلية. So our poet Al-Hajj Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah, accomplished, erudite poet, a talented one. And by the way, she continued praising the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this very long poem. جات الحور تهني لآمنة الزكية، فرحت بالطيور ووحوش البرية، أتى مكحول دهين مختونا منقى، مقطوع السر طاهر جسمه النور بقى، مر في الهجير من الحرب موقع، فاغ الأنبياء واسمه الله شق، في عروجه الوحي فتح له الطباق، جاز السبع شاف ربه بالبراق، حياه دناه فوق العرش راقي، أعطاه الشفاعة والحوض إليه ساقي، خير الأنبياء وأكملهم شريعة، وأعظمهم خلق ذاتا وريعة، فاق آدم ونوح المدح بشريعة، ليه الغيم يظل من الحر سريعة، منايه القمر والشاة والنمير والعير والجذع والضب والبعير. So she continue praising the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. أصحاب الليوث الهلك الأعادي راكبين الخيول الغر الجيادي، إن الصديق عمر عثمان الزنادي والكرار علي عنهم ربي راضي. يا حاج البريق لاح لي من جهاته خلاني أنوح دمع العين شتاته. يا رب يا كريم زور ليه حياته، زورة ليه حياته نوصله في مرخام نغمر بالنجاة. صلى الله عليك يا سمح الصفات والتسليم كثير عدد الكائنات. ترضيك يا رسول سارة تنيل نجاتي جملة المسلمين في كل الجهات. So as you listen, the audience, this is just one example of the numerous, of the abundant prophetic madih poetry composition written by the noted poet الحاجة السارة الشيخ محمد وقيع الله, the daughter of the noted wali Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah, and the full sister of the noted perfect wali and poet Sheikh Abdul Rahim al-Burai of Kurdufan.
أأنتم فروضي ونافلي، أأنتم حديثي وشغلي، يا قبلتي في صلاتي إذا وقعت أصلي. الله الله أنتم أأنتم فروضي ونافلي، أأنتم حديثي وشغلي، يا قبلتي في صلاتي إذا وقفت أصلي. الله الله.
And then the audience just a glimpse of this rich history of this great woman have been presented. The story of Al-Hajj Sarah bint Sheikh Muhammad Waqi Allah, the poet, the teacher, the healer, the midwife, and the servant of God. A woman whose life embodied the spirit of asceticism, generosity, and devotion, whose legacy continues to inspire the women of Sudan and beyond. So as you listen, the audience, they told a short biography about this great woman, part of her contribution, putting in consideration that she lived during the year 1918 and passed away in the year 2010. A woman that left her shining imprint among her own community. Till seeing you in another episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.